Hello and what is up YouTube? My name is G3Iron and today we just got news about mana based gems as well as a Stormbind demo, which is of course a new skill that is coming in 3.10 Delirium League, which releases on March 13th, so we are just over a week away. I haven't read these particular announcements yet, so you'll be getting all of my live reactions as we dive right into today's announcement. So without any further ado, if of course you're new to the channel, you can like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about more videos and more discussions just like this one. Okay, so mana-based skill gems. All right, alongside Path of Exile Delirium, we are introducing gems that allow you to translate mana investment into damage. Okay, that's what I thought auras used to be that reserve mana, but now there's something new, so that's interesting. This post shares more information about the new Stormbind and Arcane Cloak skill gems, as well as the Archmage support. Okay, so if we want to cosplay as Gandalf in POE, we can do this now? While there are some existing options in Path of Exile that facilitate using mana as a source of damage or defense, these usually come from quite niche sources. Since mana is such a fundamental mechanic, we felt that there could be more support for players who are interested in builds that fully invest in mana. Hierophants? Are Hierophants going to rejoice after this post? Is that what I'm hearing? Introducing new gems facilitates this desire while also having the bonus of allowing you to gain damage from your mana pool in a way that is distinct from reserving it for auras. Okay, cool. So the promise is new way to use mana. Arcane Cloak. Arcane Cloak is a guard skill, and like other guard skills, it is instant with a cooldown that does not expire during the skill's effect. The extent of your build's mana investment will scale both the offensive and defensive properties of Arcane Cloak. It uses a percentage of your unreserved mana to grant a buff that absorbs 75% of all damage from hits before that damage affects your life or energy shield, similar to Steel Skin and Molten Shell. The amount of damage Arcane Cloak's buff can absorb is determined by how much mana was used. Okay, that's strong. At least on paper, that is very strong. While the buff is active, you'll also gain additional lightning damage proportional to the mana used by the skill. The damage bonus relies on the buff being active, so you'll need to ensure that you don't take more damage than your buff allows for, or you'll lose the effect of both until the cooldown resets. Okay, so cooldown investment? Cooldown on Shaper Boots, cooldown on Belt? Sounds about right. The flexible nature of this skill allows you to use it in different scenarios, perhaps as a burst of damage against bosses, or as a quick layer of defense against incoming damage spikes. Just make sure you have plenty of mana to spare. Okay, so this is almost like a more active version of MOM, right? Like instead of looking at your mana with MOM and saying, hey, this is more passive, effective HP, this is saying, here is a one-shot guard to protect you against getting one-shot. I like it. It probably is going to be a bit more active. I guess some folks will just set it up just like other guard skills as a cast when damage taken setup. So that's a possibility. In fact, I would even say at this point a probability, but maybe Hierophants will actually be able to tweak it and make their own sort of build out of that. That's interesting. All right, Stormbind. Stormbind is a level 28 channeling skill that works in a fashion that's similar to Mines, but with a channeling component. Okay, so at first, if that's your pitch, if your pitch is it's going to be Mines, but you have to channel them, that's not the way to make me excited. I'm just saying. Okay, the initial channeling aspect of Stormbind lays a grid of runes that hinder enemies. As a second layer of offense, Stormbind also grants the Rune Blast ability, a channeling spell that upgrades the area of effect and damage of Stormbind's runes. The more mana you spend while channeling Rune Blast, the greater the area of effect and damage your upgraded runes will have. When you stop channeling, all of your Stormbind runes will detonate in a sequence, dealing lightning damage to an area. Your character will also be teleported to the location of the first rune that was detonated. Okay, so it's a mine that also has body swap, that also is like Blade Flurry because it stacks its damage, but then it also has this massive AoE layer to it. Okay. That sounds like a lot going on. I'm going to be interested to see what the actual video looks like. Okay. Because of its various components, sorry, I've got different build ideas already zooming around my head. Because of its various components, Stormbind can be used in several ways. Either as a single layer to hinder enemies, a sizable blast for your foes, or as an option for movement. Because of the way it scales, you'll be rewarded for having a high mana cost and fast cast speed, as these allow the runes to be upgraded quickly and to a higher capacity. Archmage support. The Archmage support can be used with any spell that deals damage with hits and has a mana cost. It converts the supported spell into one that scales with mana investment. Okay. Alright, now we're talking. Instead of using the skill's inherent mana cost, the Archmage support causes it to use a percentage of your unreserved maximum mana. The larger the size of your unreserved mana pool, the greater the cost of your supported spell. Mana multipliers from other support gems will further modify this cost. As a trade-off for this higher mana cost, you'll gain lightning damage based on the new amount of mana your supported skill costs. The higher your skill's mana cost, the more damage you'll gain from Archmage support. Okay, I like it. So it's almost similar to like a built-in Indigan, right, as a support gem, where Indigan, you're trying to rage mana in order to build up the amount of damage that you are doing, increasing your spell damage with each of your casts. Obviously, if you've got a certain amount of mana that has spent recently, then of course Indigan really, really buffs your spell damage. So it almost feels like a skill gem that's been built in, almost like the Indigan skill gem that's been built back in, but it's support. It's not an active spell gem. So that means that we can slap this bad boy on pretty much any spell build that you want. If you want to do a brand build, if you want to do Blade Vortex, if you want to do, I don't know, what are the other fantastic spells right now? If you want to go with, I don't know, Spell Slinger and try to support all of your, 6 linked spells or whatever that you're going to set up for your Spell Slinger and your Poet's Pen, just proc everything all at the same time and make it cost a bazillion mana. The problem with Spell Slinger, though, is going to be that it reserves some of your mana. So there's going to be some trade-offs there. It seems interesting. Essentially, you can role play now as a Hierophant and pretend that you're Dumbledore or Gandalf, and you've just got this massive stack of mana that you are going to then unleash onto the field of combat as you devastate your foes. Like that feels pretty cool. That, at least in concept, that feels pretty cool. Like, you're essentially going to be looking at your mana pool now and viewing it as a damage source. Like, hey, how big can I get my mana pool? The bigger I can get my mana pool, the bigger I can make my damage source. So that part seems pretty dang cool. This support naturally increases in power as you level and gain a larger mana pool, but further investment into mana on your passive skill tree will greatly improve its damage. Check out the new gems in action in the video down below, posted by Bex. Okay, let's take a look. What's this thing look like? So here's Arcane Cloak. I like that skill effect. Hang on a second, let's watch that. So you actually have like a visual effect that notifies you if you're taking damage. Do you see that? Like when the character's actually getting hit by the projectiles. That's pretty cool. So you have a visual effect that you're getting hit, and you have a visual effect of when it expires as well, because it's no longer on you. Okay, this is Arc with no mage support. This is Arc with Archmage support. Okay. Don't pay attention to the damage, by the way. Those of you that are, I know every single video, whenever we do anything like this that's a preview, it's like, oh, but look at the damage, Iron, the damage sucks. Don't look at the damage, okay? The damage presently doesn't matter. Look at the mechanics of it. So Arc with no Archmage support. That was like, what, 15 mana? Is that what he's spending? He's going from like 750 down to what? 730 something? And then he gets like, what, 6 casts out? Like maybe? Okay, Stormbind and Rune Blast. Okay, so that's the mine effect. That's laying down a zone. Oh, I like it. It doesn't... They shouldn't have said it's like a mine. They should have said it's a channeled skill that fills up the ground. It almost looks like what the Conqueror does when he fills up the different areas and then they explode. That's actually what it looks like. The problem, I feel like the problem with that as a skill gem, what is it? Runebind plus Stormbind plus Runeblast. I feel like the problem with that for bossing is going to be that your AoE is actually spread out over too great of an area, whereas you'd want it just concentrated underneath the boss. Then again, it might actually have overlapping areas of damage. If that's the case, maybe you can get to like an AoE breakpoint on this particular skill. Yeah, maybe there is like an AoE breakpoint where you can get to a certain range or something of the damage that you are doing, and those explosions will actually overlap onto one another. Also, do you see how he jumps? That was mentioned in the skill description, that the character jumps to the first rune that was placed. Let's look at that. So the first one that gets placed, here's the first one. Here's the first one. Okay, that's interesting. So yeah, you could use it as a movement mechanic, but as a movement mechanic, I don't see that, at least presently, being used unless you just min-max the heck out of it, in which case there's other options for movement mechanics if you want to min-max the heck out of them, right? So that's actually some pretty cool stuff. So we got Arcane Cloak. I like that it gives you some visual feedback when you get hit as well as when it's actually up. I like that Archmage support is actually giving you something to do with your mana. Like, so you got 7,000 mana, let's go use it and turn that into damage. And then I like what this is doing here. That doesn't feel like a mine. Like, it doesn't have a detonation, right? It's just a channeling skill. That to me feels way more like Blade Flurry than anything else. But I could be wrong. Anyway, I've been wrong before. Mrs. Draconis says it every single day. My wife, she says, you've been wrong before, you'll be wrong again. So I'm sure I was wrong on this now, and I'm sure I'll be wrong again in the future. Anyway, feel free to drop us a comment down below with your own thoughts on Arcane Cloak, on Stormbind, and then on Archmage support for these mana-based skill gems. And really, I feel like there's going to be a Gandalf archetype. Like, somebody's going to go make it. Somebody's going to go make the forum guide for playing as, good guy Gandalf in Path of Exile. Somebody go make that, and we'll feature it here on the channel if it's well written. Anyway, I hope 3.10 Delirium League is the league a Mirror of Calandra drops for you. Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.